Well, hello there. Welcome to another month of Radical Reimagining. I'm Deven Wisner, here with my colleagues Tiffany Smith and Libby Smith. And today we're really excited to welcome Dr. Allison Titcomb. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So just as a quick introduction, when I think of Allison, immediately what comes to mind for me is just this idea of a master convener, a convener of people. And this really makes sense, I think, just as she wears a variety of hats, first as the Senior Vice President at the United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona, as an educator at the University of Arizona, as well as an evaluation consultant at Alta Consulting. And also for those in the evaluation world, you may know that Allison is also a leading liaison between local affiliates and the American Evaluation Association. So I definitely feel honored to call Allison part of my eval friend family, and I know others share the same sentiment. So again, just so glad you're here, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So jumping into our first question, I guess we would just love to hear, what about this particular initiative resonated with you?
Well, one of the things, because I not only love learning, but part of learning is being reflective. And it's one of those, strong core beliefs that I have that really to learn, you have to stop and think through what you just learned. So and that's what, to me, the radical reimagining is all about, is the working in enough time to pause, reflect, and then move forward. And, whether you're an efficiency kind of person and say that's the way you maximize every little piece of what you do, or whether you are a person who wants to make sure that everything is super meaningful and that you're not just running from one thing to the next thing blank, kind of, without thinking, that's the part that is most attractive to me.
Awesome.
I love that. We all know I love that at this point, right? As the reflective practice person. So the question for this month was, what are the elements of community that allow you to be authentically you? What are your thoughts?
So I'm going to sound like a broken record now because of my focus on learning. That's what I've noticed, right? Is if I'm in places where, whether you want to call it the culture or the expectations are around learning, that is where I feel the most at home with myself. And I think the most confident you talked about me wanting to connect and convene people. That's what I find myself doing, whether it's formal learning situations or not. And I'm actually most at home in more informal adult learning kinds of situations with people who are motivated and are there because they want to be there and not because they have to be there. So those are the situations that I get really excited about. For example, just yesterday, I was on a professional development all-day thing. So I think it was my first all-day virtual conference that I'd actually done since the beginning of all of this stuff. Great group, the Waters Center for Systems Thinking. That originally is housed down here in Tucson. That's how we got to know them. But they're so masterful about their intentionality with which they put together we got a box in the mail with all of the stuff. I felt like I was at a conference and lots of opportunities to break. So they had an intensive 20-minute kickoff that was terrific with lots of ideas. And they immediately paused for processing. And what do you want to do with this? And then you went, and then you had a break, and then you came back, and then you were in a small group to process even more. And so it's places like that I just, makes me, so yeah. So that, even though that was all day, I felt so energized and refreshed from doing it. And I think it's these elements of community that you're talking about. So it's allowing people to process, allowing people to have voice so that it's not just one way. Again, so I'll say it. So this is for me. This is not to say you should never do this, because of course there's times and places for these things. But for my personal preference, and again, for my being authentic, is when I walk into a room at a real conference and I go and I get the handouts really quickly, hoping that they have handouts so I can take a quick look at them. I stand in the back, and if it looks at all like it's going to be, here's the PowerPoint and we're going to read you the PowerPoint, I'm like, I'm out of there. I'm like, great. I got the information I need. I can read it. I'm going to go do something else that's more interactive because that's what I need. So I'm pretty aware of that for myself as a learner. So that's the main one. Yeah.
That's so interesting though that you say that like that wouldn't have been an environment that would have, or a frame that I would have originally come up with, this idea of like these learning spaces that you're in where you feel that sense of community, right? My mind in answering this prompt went right to spaces where I show up repetitively, or I'm with these people and like I build that community. But I think that's so interesting that you can, again, stand in the back of a room and know now what characteristics you're looking for to know if that's a space where you're going to feel welcome.
Right.
And so I want to ask, like, at what point did you in your career development, in your personal development, figure that out and give yourself permission to do that?
That's a good question. So it's also a memory question. So you can see my eyeballs going up to my head. I'm visual. I'm thinking about it. I would say, so when I joined AEA, it was like in 1998. That was 2 years after graduate school. And again, I will say that if I'm motivated because for whatever reasons, the person in the room is presenting something that I think is really critical to what I want to learn, I don't care what mode they're going to use. I'm going to stay and listen and pull whatever I need out of it. I think it was this gradual thing of where you are in spaces where you kind of have to be there, like when you're in school and somebody's a lecturer and you as a student, you can't change how they are. And I always, even in undergrad, liked the more interactive stuff anyway, but I'm a phenomenal note taker. I got to just say that because I'm compulsive, because I'm a bit fidgety.
I've noted that about you before, Allison.
So I'm fidgety. Part of it is that. Part of it is it really helps me focus to have pen in hand or and I don't like keyboard stuff that much, but pen in hand to keep my attention. And so by doing that, you become really aware of, damn, I have these questions. And so I'm writing questions in the margins or they go by. And then as you get more bold and you're like, whoa, they didn't really explain that. And you're kind of looking around the rest of the room. So this is my listening and observation stuff. And that's the evaluator in me, is I'm thinking, I think other people are confused by this because I'm hearing murmur, around the room. And then I'll be like, nobody's doing it. Up goes my hand, pause. Can you stop for a minute? I think can we pause? So getting more bold is that, partly that's age. So I'm going to be 56 in October. And I was always an extroverted, good student. So I was always willing to do that. But I pause more now because I don't want to just be that person in the room. And I'm willing to be that person in the room. Does that make sense? So it's evolved over time, I would say, since like the 90s that I've become more and more about that. And also when you get a thing like, damn it, I'm paying for this. It's my experience. I'm going to go look for
my experience. Yeah.
And if you want to use AA as an example, I mean, AA is my place, right? A conference. I love that conference. That has been the place where I've learned the most, my people and all that. And there's always 5 things I want to go to. So that's another part of it, is there's always choice within there. And so if you have choice, how do you decide? Yeah. Also, I study judgment decision-making in graduate school too. So I'm always a little analytical and geeky about, what are my priorities here and how am I going to choose?
Well, this is already super inspiring to me. Like just this idea, I mean, I guess on some level I knew it, but this idea that I can go into a half-hour presentation with a group of people that I've maybe never seen before, like at a conference, and that I can create community in that half hour. And that for some people, that is community, where they're looking for it. It's just, that's not ever a frame I'd thought of as community. Well, and I love it.
Twitter is too. And by the way, I learned that from the systems thinking group, because I remember going to one of their conferences over 10 years ago, right when Twitter was starting to be a thing. And they were very explicit in that conference. We are trying to create community, and we are trying to create a learning community. And there are people who are following us who could not be here in the room with us. Please tweet your learning. And here's the hashtag. And so again, I didn't tweet that much. I had a Twitter account just because I kind of thought I should. But when I found out, oh, I can use Twitter for sharing my learning, what? So I call myself an event tweeter. I'm getting a little more into it because now I'm like friends with you guys, and you know what I mean? I do a little more now than I used to. But it used to be, you could see it, the spikes is when I would go to an event, I would go like, what's your hat, you know, and I'm obnoxious now even to others who haven't quite gotten it. And I'm like, what's the hashtag you want me to use? And they're like, what? I go, you want me to make it up? Really? But to the idea of sharing, what are the essences? So it's not, I'm so happy to be here at this conference. It's so exciting. That's nice. I could do that. And it creates buzz, but that's not the learning. And so it's extracting that. What are the nuggets? What are the insights that you're gaining? And I realized, wow, this could be a record for me. And so that's where I'm not necessarily taking as much notes. So if it's one where, so I'll sit there at a conference with my phone and my iPad and my notes, and I'm often on two different, like, so I'm trying to tweet, take notes, and do all of this, juggling all this stuff at the same time. So it's kind of crazy. But if it's really intense and it's one where I'm really focused on, oh my gosh, the content and everything is so intense, I don't tweet because I'm just taking the notes and being really focused on it. So yeah. But those are, I feel authentic in those situations because I can be a little, look at me, I can do multiple things at once because I have to, you know, because I'm that way.
It. Yeah.
Also, the asking questions part, I think, is really important too, regardless of any of these things. Is if I'm in a space, whether it's work related, conference related, classroom related, any of this, if I feel that questions are not allowed, that's where I start getting really, really uncomfortable, irritated, even kind of sometimes ragey, depending on how bad it is, right? Yeah. And I remember in graduate school, a situation where, because I came from the sciences and then went into education, and I had a qualitative methods class, and we were doing presentations at the end, and I came from a culture of, you ask questions, and part of this is we're here to learn from each other. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're going to ask questions. And you can tell even just my intensity right now, which is another thing about being able to be intense, because that's me. So I asked the question, not because I'm trying to get anybody. I just had a question, and there was, I think, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was sort of like, they said something, it was this really contradictory thing. So this, therefore this, and it's like, did not go together in my head. So I asked them about it. And in fact, it was like calling them out. I didn't intend it to be calling them out. That wasn't what I was trying to do. But again, as we know, intentions are, yeah, that's nice, but how are you going to do this? And it became clear to me, though, that the culture in this college of education was and particularly in this class, but from a set of people, was not to ask questions. Oh no, you just clap politely and say, good job, and move on. And I walked out of there just being completely irritated beyond belief. Yeah. And my particular program was one where you were supposed to ask questions. So this was another one, but it makes you more aware. So two things about that. One, obviously, I'm intense. I care about stuff. I get into things. That's another one where if I get told, tone it down, Allison, or I remember in college, I was in a small group setting and there was a lawyer who basically told me I was being unprofessional by being enthusiastic. Like, you're coming across as young and this, and you'll not be believed and all that. And I walked out of there, I got this feedback from this person, and I was like, And I, again, took it, said, that's good to know. So you might need to think about situations, it's important to think about. And I'm like, and that's BS, man. That's her world. I'm not going to be able to hear. It's like, forget that. So in any event, so many things. And it does bring me to another point, though, is that, yes, I'm an extrovert. I love to brainstorm. I love to talk, blah, 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 blah. And is that appropriate for all settings? No. And as a facilitator, one of the things that's really important is also, when is it right to intensely listen and intensely observe and not necessarily do what I'm doing right now? And that's why I love facilitating in big groups where it's complicated, because I can be fully on and fully intense, and I'm not putting any one person off by that. It's for the room. And I'm trying to really hold that space for everybody in the room. That takes a lot of energy, and I've got it. I can do it, and I like doing it. So
I'm going to share something right now that might be a little weird, but it tells me something very much about how aware you are of who you are in whatever space you're in, because my perception of you as somebody who liked to talk a lot, which is how you've described yourself,
which is true,
was not like my overall impression of you. Like, I know you from some very specific contexts, and I wouldn't have said that, like, oh yeah, Allison's a person who just like really likes to like fill the space and talk a lot. It tells me you really know your space, right? And who you are in community, depending on the space that you're in.
and it's important to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's a choice, and it's part of that, the reason is because I care about the community, and I care about other people having space to be able to talk, and I get it as an extrovert. It's too easy to fill that up and give people absolutely no chance to, you know, to be there. When it's uncomfortable for me is when I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk at all, and I'm not sure, and I'm still trying to figure it out, and what is my role, and I'm trying to, you know, but again, that's just learning, I guess. But I've been in places where I felt that way all the time, and I can't do that I can't do that long term. So if I take on a project, for example, well, I mean, it's similar to evaluation work. If I get asked to do a project, I have certain, I guess I'll call them screening questions, if you will. I don't tell people they're screening questions, but they're kind of screening questions. And because what I want to assess is what level of commitment do they have to actually change? So it's the developmental evaluation, and it's utilization focused evaluation. And if I get any hint that they're doing this just to do it, they got money, they got told they had to do an evaluation, and they're just going to go through the motions, I do not say yes to that project. So that's another one for my authenticity. And I try to be really clear with people. This is the kind of evaluation that I do best. What are you looking for? And if you're looking for monitoring and accountability stuff, I could do it, but that's not where I do my best work. So it's that in conversation and back and forth negotiation up front. So there are no, you know, hopefully there are no surprises. Does that make sense? And I mean, other people do that too. I'm not the only one, but it's really important part of my work that way.
I guess being aware of that, right? And being able to set those boundaries, and that's, you know, how are you ensuring and protecting the space so that you can show up authentically? Right?
And you put it out there, you invite what you're looking for.
Right.
You invite based on your strengths. You say, this is what I can offer you. Is that what you're interested in? Will that be useful to you? So.
Well, we always find that these conversations with people each month kind of lead us to where we're going in the next month. And this idea, and it's something we talk about quite a bit, I know Tiffany and I at least, is this how important self-awareness is to the work that we do, and being in these spaces, whether they're with clients or, you know, your peers, people you're learning with, and you know, being, you know, self-awareness is a journey, you know, but it's
well,
pretty
and that's
critical to
something
our
that
work.
You know, I've heard in different places where, you know, people who are more or less successful, for example, in leadership situations, a lot of it is around their own self-awareness or lack thereof. And it's self and other awareness. And how can you hold both of that's a facilitator thing. Again, people have said, how do you hold both of those things? Well, maybe it's controlled schizophrenia or something. I don't know. It's possible. You know, how do you hold multiple, like when I'm at that event yesterday where part of my brain is paying attention to content and is reveling in that. And a completely other part of my brain is totally paying attention to how they're doing everything. And I'm making notes on the sides of my notes of, ooh, that was a good idea. Ooh, I liked how they did. I'm constantly paying attention to process as well as content. So, yeah.
I would say it's practice, knowing that you need to do it, and then practice. So,
yeah.
Well, very good. Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome. This was fun. I appreciate.
This
Thanks
was
for the
a lot of fun.
invitation.
Yes, thanks for
And
spending.
as an extrovert, thanks for letting me not just put this in my journal.
Yes, live reflection time.
Perfect. Thanks for reflecting with us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Bye.
Okay, bye.